And away we go. It's the DFS Early Bird presented by Awesemo.com, also brought to you in part by Yahoo Sports. Check out their DFS offering. You can get a whole new vantage point on how to play DFS and roster construction by playing over their pricing. Much different to pitchers, but you still need to understand the way to stack and the way to go about roster construction, so check them out when you have an opportunity. Dan Strafford, Adam Scher with you on this Tuesday morning, getting you ready for a 15-game slate for the Major League Baseball Tuesday night slate. Adam, how the hell are you doing?
Doing good. Excited to have some pitching that we can talk about on this slate after basically everyone sucked yesterday.
Yeah, it was a very large pile of manure when all was said and done for a Monday night. But we have 15 games, and you have a ton of pitchers, 9K and above. And you don't see that often on DraftKings. We are using DraftKings pricing to jump off here. If you're interested in more content, as always, you can head on over to Awesemo.com. You can sign up, use the promo code EARLYBIRD. That gets you 50% off your first month. There are also some giveaways going on now if you want to check out Emac's Twitter feed and whatever crazy Fred Van Vliet tournament he has going on. You can see what that is. I'm thinking of doing a mystery player of the day thing where on every podcast we give stats and the listeners need to guess who it is. Whoever gets all 7 right for the week, they win an Awesemo subscription. I just haven't cleared it with anyone yet, so I can't say that's actually going to happen, but it's an idea I have, so we'll see if that comes.
Not a bad idea.
So Tom, sorry, man, that's what's happening in the future. But this is a slate that is obviously deep when you have 15 teams. Period. Or 15 games. Period. Full stop. You're going to have a situation here where you have a hopeful spread out in ownership when it comes to pitching. You have what looks like 9 players, 9K and above. I want to ask you strategy first, and then we'll dive into players. When you consider ownership, I know it's slate dependent, so we'll get that out of the way. But are you considering on a site like DraftKings or Yahoo combined ownership or individual ownership when it comes to pitching?
Combined, not even just when it comes to pitching, but in terms of the entire roster. For one, I don't care quite as much on these 15-game slates because
right.
You just have everything flattened out. But in general, anyway, if I can play 2 popular pitchers, if I'm on some 1% owned stack that nobody else is playing, there's no reason for me to not be playing the pitchers that I want to play the most, and vice versa. If I think I have some like diamond in the rough pitcher that nobody else is on, I can play whatever stacks I want. So I guess look at it more in context of that than I do just playing the pitchers off of each other.
Well, I think that's the point I was hoping you would make, and well done, but is that ownership is as powerful as you allow it to be. So Awesemo.com has ownership projections. It's not simply going line by line and trying to get the lower owned position player or lower owned pitcher. It's understunderstanding your entire roster construction. And it's understanding how to use that information to build a different lineup. So to Adam's point, it's not always lower owned pitching, lower owned both pitchers or lower owned outfielders or individual players. It's understanding the overall construction of your lineup. So when you use something like ownership over at Awesemo.com, you want to take that into consideration. I will also point out one of the perks of Awesemo.com is something that I think Emac coined, because it's definitely an old man phrase, office hours. I would have gone with something younger because I'm hipper than Emac is, but I'm still old. But I do think that is a key component of what new players or players trying to get better can use at Awesemo.com to understand how an Adam or a Lofty or a Josh or an Alex even goes about doing what they do each and every day when trying to construct lineups and trying to get better themselves each and every day as they play DFS. But to dive in here, we have Bauer, Snell, Cole, Castillo, Buehler, Herman Marquez, Greinke, Hamels, and Paddock are all 9K and above. I will say I could probably pick 2 pitchers out of that pile who I would not be overly enamored with simply by name. Hamels and Greinke are 2 guys that I struggle with in DFS. I just have over the past couple of years really honing in on them. The rest, and even Greinke and Hamels on this slate because of more Greinke because of matchup, have to be considered. Going 9K and above first, just to handle this sort of batch of 9 players, who stands out to you? Who are the expensive pitchers that you think at least maybe part of your player pool or when you write up the deep dive?
Bauer stands out first and foremost. I believe he's the best pitcher in baseball. He has the best matchups you're going to get.
He's the best pitcher in baseball?
Yeah.
All right, go on.
Or at least will be by the end of the season. And he's going into Miami, a great pitcher's park against one of the worst offenses in baseball. So he's the guy that I really want there. He works deep into games. He's thrown at least 112 pitches in 5 consecutive games.
Mm-hmm.
Thrown 108 in every start this season. Works deep in the games, racks up strikeouts, does everything well, has, really, really good stuff. So he's the one that I really like. You get to Blake Snell, who I think, as of right now, I'm kind of okay with just crossing off. I really like him as a pitcher. The matchup's fine, but when you have this many good pitchers at the top and you are talking about Snell being the second most expensive pitcher, I don't really need to deal with whatever the hell's going on with his toe and guessing, if that's why he was bad last start or, if it was something else.
Right.
Garrett Cole is, again, a really good pitcher, not the best matchup against Minnesota. I would put Bauer ahead of him. Then you get, Castillo, Buehler, Marquez kind of all lumped together. I think Buehler is easily my least favorite pitcher out of those 3. The problem is that the park is great and the matchup is really good. So it kind of, keeps him in consideration. But as far as, DFS goes, Marquez is my favorite there, but he has a tough matchup. Castillo would be my second pitcher between those 3, and he's got the middle matchup there. So it's kind of, Bauer, my number 1, and then dropping down to like the, $9,700, $9,900, $10,000, $100 guys, I would say like Marquez, Castillo, and then Buehler probably.
Do you have any money on Trevor Bauer being the best pitcher in baseball? Is there a Cy Young bet somewhere you have on the side or anything like that?
No, just the amount of money I'll be getting on him every time he pitches.
Okay, fair enough. Any concern with Greinke or Hamels here? Listen, the Yankees lineup is a shell of its former self. I know Gary Sanchez is finding himself again. I know it's Arizona, more of a hitter's park. If the roof happens to be open, could be even bigger problem. But do you stay away? Is he somebody you're crossing off for Greinke?
Yeah, I just don't see the need to get there on this slate. He's someone that I'm pretty much always scared to roster. Granted, he's still good. It's just that most people with his skill set, they drop off pretty quickly.
Yep.
He's a smart enough pitcher, and he works hard enough at his craft that I think he will last longer than most people with the diminishing skill set that he has as far as stuff goes. But on this particular slate, why am I rostering him over Herman Marquez or Luis Castillo when they're at a similar price point? Not to mention Bauer or Cole.
Makes a ton of sense to me. Looking over at FanDuel, does FanDuel not have that game on that slate? Let me take a quick look here. FanDuel does some strange things from time to time. No, let's see. Yankees, Arizona. Who do they have listed as the starting pitcher here?
For Arizona?
Yeah, they don't have anyone popping up as I'm looking at it. Greinke finally shows a 10-3. So Greinke's 10-3 over on FanDuel. I don't know why he's not showing on that first sort of head, but it doesn't matter. Maybe me misusing the UI, but he is 10-3 on whatever. I'll figure that out later on FanDuel. Let's continue on here. We have a mid-tier that gives us Velasquez at 8,700 against Detroit. Porcello, Julio Teheran against San Diego at 8K. Drew Pomeranz, who I have a tough time believing in, but Park has obvious upgrade here when it comes to Oracle. He's 7,900. Then you have some names that some may not be aware of. Canning, Pineda, we've seen have some upside this year, though struggled a bit as he has been stretched out pitch count-wise. He had a good run to start the year. And then past 2 outings, negative 6.6 and 6 points DraftKings-wise. And the strikeouts have not been there for Pineda as his ERA has ballooned to 5.63. Jake Junis is a guy that I think some forget has some K upside, but this Rays team is legit. And a park like Kansas City may not be an offensive haven, but better than Tampa Bay's home stadium is. Lyles has been a bit of a DFS darling at times this year, has some K upside at Texas. Buchholz, Wainwright, CC Sabathia, and then we get into Felix Hernandez. So let's take that as our mid-tier from Paddock? Is that who so Velasquez on down to Sabathia. Does anyone stand out here as remarkably high upside, or is this a mid-tier where you're mixing and matching and trying to find what price points work best?
There are a couple that stand out to me. For one, we know Velasquez is really boom or bust, but it is a pretty nice matchup for him against Detroit. So, no problems there. Philadelphia does play up home runs, but plays up strikeouts as well. We see almost every pitcher on Philadelphia strike out a lot higher percentage of hitters at home. But the one guy that I'm really interested in here is Griffin Canning going against Toronto. His price tag is not particularly cheap. He's $7,800 on DraftKings, but I like when we get price tags like that on these good pitching prospects when they come up. If you put him at $6K, there's just the only people not playing or people just aren't paying attention to baseball at all. So getting him at this price tag, maybe or should drive his ownership down, and really it doesn't make him jump off the page, but he has good stuff. Throws in the mid-90s, grades out with a good slider as well. Steamer has him projected for like 8.5, a little shy of 8.5 strikeouts per 9 innings. He has over strikeout per 9 at AAA through his first 3 starts this season. He was over strikeout per 9 at AAA last season, and he's facing a Toronto team that really isn't great offensively, and they have a negative park shift going into Los Angeles. So I actually have interest in him making his major league debut.
That is a blasphemous statement when there is a man named Vlad Guerrero Jr. on that roster. I mean, that's all the offense you need, right? Like I was made to believe the second coming was here, and he was dressed in a Toronto Blue Jays uniform. But Canning's somebody that stood out to me, especially, and I joked before we started recording about FanDuel and about FanDuel's pricing, but Canning's 6,100 on FanDuel. And I get that you can pretty much roster most of the time anyone you want, but that's a really cheap price point for a really good matchup in a really good pitcher neutral, hitter neutral park. Now, it depends on how you construct the rest of your lineup over on FanDuel, but that's a price point that stood out to me very quickly for Canning, who does have some K upside here.
Yeah, I agree with you completely. I mean, it's kind of just, there's obviously going to be, if you can get up to, an $11,400 Bauer on FanDuel, then go for it. If you can get up to one of those aces because you have cheap stacks that you like, then fine. But going to someone like Canning, like he's cheap enough compared to those other guys. He's 60% of their salary. He's giving you a very, very sizable discount that lets you just get whatever hitters you want.
I want to confirm pitching schedule, make his next start. Yeah, okay. So Merrill Kelly's listed over on FanDuel, but it is Greinke. Kelly's been pushed back to Wednesday for his start. So making sure I was reading that correctly. So Greinke is the starter for the Diamondbacks on Tuesday's slate. As we get into the cheap end of the DFS pool, you have Felix Hernandez against the Cubs. This is a non-DFS story, and I apologize, but stories coming out that the Cubs PR department and their front office is killing stories on Addison Russell as he's coming back from his suspension. The Cubs have quickly become a team that you are very, very easy to root against from a PR perspective and from a management perspective. And that's such a weird turn from a couple of years ago when everyone was rooting for them to win, that they are just handling things from a PR perspective and from a management perspective in apparently crappy way. But they have a game here in Seattle. Felix Hernandez on the mound. This is a guy that we all loved for so long in King Felix. We knew what he was, and he gave us tons of innings over so many years. And then last week, he went out in San Diego, and I acknowledge that, against the Padres, and again acknowledge that. But in a 75-pitch outing, had 8 strikeouts, gave up just 1 earned run on a home run. Do you buy into Felix still having something left in the tank, or is this too high-powered an offense for the Cubs that Felix has any sort of upside?
I just can't see myself getting there on this slate. I don't buy into him. There was a while last year that I actually did think that he had kind of figured some stuff out. But this isn't really the spot where I'd want to go there anyway. It's not really the slate that I'd want to go there. I think there's just more talented pitchers at the bottom that I would rather take a chance on, Sandy Alcantara in particular. So, yeah, not a ton of strikeouts in the Cubs lineup, not to mention you do have some really good hitters. I'd rather like $500-$600 and take a chance on Jordan Lyles, or save $700 and take a chance on Alcantara.
And it's I'm very happy that you said Alcantara first, because I was going to say Alcantara again, and I know that's not how you say it. And I'm glad you said it first, because it jogged the memory. And Alcantara. So you have down here on the bottom end, and we're going to find some pitchers to stack against pretty quickly herein. But you get Felix, Aaron Sanchez. Sorry, not Aaron Sanchez. Anibal Sanchez for the Nationals against St. Louis. You have Vargas, Chacin, Alcantara, Tyson Ross, Nova, Brooks, Cashner, and Sampson. And insert your I want to talk to Sampson jokes here. But you have a bottom end that is juicy from a stack against perspective. But you did mention Alcantara at 6,100 at least is on your radar.
Yeah, the strikeout upside is questionable, especially against what should be left-handed heavy Cleveland team. But he really has not allowed any power whatsoever going back to last season to left-handed hitters. He does have a changeup that he basically gives up, nothing. It's allowed a 247 expected WOBA, 0.050 expected ISO. And overall this year overall since the start of last year against lefties, a 284 expected WOBA with a 0.092 expected ISO. So I just think that he's a little too cheap in that ballpark against a Cleveland offense that, it's healthier and it's getting better now that Lindor is back and you have Carlos Gonzalez, but it's still not anything you're really that scared of. I think that he's a pretty reasonable option, even if he doesn't get a lot of strikeouts, just to be a guy that goes out there and throws enough innings to get you 15, 16, 17 points.
And that's all about the roster construction and how you're bringing your team together to give you the most upside. On the year, the Indians' active roster has a 24.0% K percentage against righties, 78 WRC plus, 141 ISO. Again, to Adam's point, they're getting healthy, but these are still numbers that are relative to the talent on the team. They let a lot of talent go last year. And even with Lindor back and Ramirez seemingly starting to find his way, it is going to be something that is worth keeping track of. Just got the great email from Verizon that I'm out of data. Great. Thanks, guys. Whatever. What am I supposed to do now? You're just going to charge me hand over fist, so it's fine. Let's talk any other pitchers. Anybody I missed or anybody that you think is worth mentioning as before we move on to position by position?
No, I don't think so.
All right. So a 15-game slate. You hear Adam already here on the podcast. This is going to change throughout the day. There's going to be changes in lineups, changes in umpires, the things that all matter for picking some pitchers. So you'll want to stay tuned over in Slack chat if you're an Awesemo member. If you're not, the live shows are free. They're over on YouTube. You get the MLB strategy show, you get the deep dive, and you get live before lock. So you'll want to stay tuned. Things can change. Things can move around, especially from an offensive perspective. As we start to get lineups, things can be a little bit different, and you can get maybe up to a higher end pitcher, or maybe you realize that the high end offenses are going to be where it's at. You're going to have to pay down at pitching as the day goes on. So you want to stay tuned for that. We're going to go quickly here, position by position, just get Adam some of Adam's top plays, see where his mind's at right now. I think you're going to start to see some trends of some matchups that stand out and stacks that will be pretty evident as we go through. I'm looking at you, Andrew Kashner, but that's for a different time and a different story. I mean, Derek Carty still loves him. I don't know what that's all about. But we start at catcher. Sanchez has been on another level since he came back from injury. Home run 2 days ago, home run in the, what was that? No, so he had the Grand Slam 2 games ago. The last game out, he had a home run. The Grand Slam, I don't know if you saw it, Adam. He hit it farther than I've seen a ball hit in Oracle Park since Bonds. Like it was just a mammoth shot that went 20 to 25 rows deep in left center field. This guy has immense power, but he's 5K and he's still a catcher. So you have Realmuto, you have Sanchez, you have Wilson Contreras. Narvaez is against Hamels. Mitch Garver, who has some weird Black Magic going for his career right now at 4,200. Fegley against Porcello. McCann has Cashner. There's not a catcher here that stands out immensely to me, so I start to feel like, well, let's go find the cheaper option. Someone like Zunino, who's had some higher xWOBA and slugging numbers over the past couple of weeks, stands out a little bit against Junis. But what do you like? Is there a catcher that stands out a little bit for you?
It's a pretty weak position as usual. Obviously Gary Sanchez is really good, but I don't think I want to pay all the way up at this position because it's not just comparing him to catchers. You have to be comparing him, at 5K against Zach Greinke to other 5K or similarly priced hitters, and he doesn't really grade out favorably there. Fortunately, there are a couple of cheap options. You mentioned Zunino against Jake Junis. There's a good chance that strikes out 3 times and looks really bad doing it against Jake Junis, just burying sliders. But Junis does give up plenty of home runs. It is a ballpark upgrade for Tampa Bay, and Zunino can hit the ball really far, so he gives you that upside that you're looking for. You also have a couple of options on teams with high implied totals. Francisco Cervelli is inexpensive, should be hitting probably around 6th against Adrian Sampson, which is a favorable matchup in a good park shift for Pittsburgh. Wellington Castillo is only 3,600 on DraftKings facing Andrew Cashner and whoever is in the Orioles bullpen behind Andrew Cashner. So both of those guys I think are pretty appealing. Even Austin Wins from the Orioles at 3,300. They brought him back up because he hits better than any catching option that they have. Not an ideal matchup against Ivan Nova. I prefer targeting him with lefties. But again, probably hitting 6th in the order and reasonably priced with some power.
Makes a lot of sense to me. I will also throw out, he hasn't been particularly good this year, and I think it's a situation to monitor, but Francisco Mejia against Julio Teheran in Globe Life is, at least from the left side, somebody I might take a flyer on at 3,200 on DraftKings, depending on where he is in the lineup. He has batted second at times this year. Don't think that'll be the case on Tuesday, but at least worth monitoring for me at a cheap price point with some upside. Let's go to first base next. Obviously, lots of talent here and different ways to go in lineup construction. Lefty-lefty matchup for Bellinger in Oracle Park. Bellinger's shown us he can hit anywhere, and that's fine. I don't know that I can even consider him here in a non-platoon advantage in the worst hitters park in Major League Baseball. You do have Jose Abreu against Cashner, though he's 5,200. Freeman gets Paddock in Globe Life at 4,900. It's a bunch of expensive batters here, and it makes sense. They should be. But who do you like at the top end of first base?
Yeah, a lot of expensive guys. Abreu at 5,200. I mean, it's a great matchup, but it's a pretty expensive price tag. But when you're, I know the matchup's good, but he's basically the same price as Paul Goldschmidt. And, Goldschmidt's just such a good hitter talent-wise. Not that Abreu isn't, but Goldschmidt is Goldschmidt. So it makes it a little bit tough there. But, from a stack perspective, obviously, if you can get there, it's perfectly fine. Josh Bell is someone I would have really liked, but he's priced up. It's a tough one. Anthony Rizzo at 4,600 is okay, but it's not a great park. Encarnacion against Hamels, again, it's a mediocre matchup. This is a position where I think I might actually look to save a little bit of money. And it's weird. I know people don't like to do that, and people are talking about it in Slack today, not wanting to pay down for guys like Jesus Aguilar or Nate Lowe from Tampa Bay because there is opportunity cost at first base. But the flip side of that is normally your first basemen do have power.
Right.
So while there is the opportunity cost of not getting to these elite first base hitters, you are, when you compare them across positions to other value that you're going to have to fit into your lineup, normally they're the ones that have the most upside.
Yeah, and you deal with a 4K or 4-2 Mitch Moreland if he's batting third or fourth, or you deal with a even cheaper Justin Bour against Buchholz at 3,900. You do have the same power upside, really, that you do at the top end. And so that makes a ton of sense. I will say that on the year, Christian Walker surprisingly has not hit lefties nearly as well as I would have thought looking at his numbers. He's had a very, very solid start to the year. A former Orioles farmhand who I think got DFA'd. He wasn't good with the Orioles. This isn't a Baltimore dig. Just wasn't. Now he's out in Arizona getting playing time and seemingly has become the second coming of Babe Ruth. But you do have a matchup here with Sabathia, who gives up some power, but even his price tag is elevated, and you're dealing with across first base a lot of choices to be made. I think it's going to be a lot about what you have left and how you can make your roster work. You look at second base. Ketel Marte is your most expensive second baseman on DK at 4,800. Lori Garcia against Cashner is 4,700, tied with Ozzie Albies and Brandon Lau. And it's fun that Tampa Bay has Low and Lau, both spelled exactly the same, but pronounced differently. VR is 4,600. Jose Altuve against Pineda always has upside at 4,600. Chavis for the Red Sox up to 4,500. Then you get into the likes of Kendrick and Torres. Wait, Howie Kendrick is $4,500. What world am I living in that Howie Kendrick did? He looks old in his headshot. Like, he looks like he should be playing the Atlantic League this year, but he's been playing well. So who are some of the names at second base that you're into?
So first I want to sneak it in right now, so hopefully people miss it, but Chris Davis is my favorite first baseman. Hopefully that's just nobody catches that one. But as far as second base goes, yeah, I mean, Ketel Marte, really good from the right side, but also the most expensive second baseman on the slate. Not great. I do like Brandon Lau. Tons of home run upside against Junis. Albies from the left side. I prefer him from the right side, and he certainly has a tough matchup against Paddock. I don't see the need to pay $4,700 for Leury Garcia. So, yeah, I mean, Brandon Lau is my favorite out of that top group. I would say Jonathan VR is right behind him. Jose Altuve, though, this is another spot where you can just talk about talent. Yeah, Michael Pineda is not a bad pitcher. And, some of the guys that are facing hitters above him, like Ivan Nova and like Andrew Cashner, are nowhere near as good as Pineda. But Jose Altuve is just a better hitter than VR and Lau and Albies and Garcia and Ketel Marte. And he's, cheaper, albeit slightly, but cheaper than those guys. So it's a spot where I like going to Altuve just because of the price point compared to other guys around them.
Yeah, and that makes a whole lot of sense to me. You get a ton of upside at similar price points. To be clear, Adam is not going to just easily be able to sneak in that Chris Davis is his favorite play at first base, but he's 3,100, right? I mean, he's 3,100 and has shown that the power is still there. Nova has clearly had specific control issues, and I mean that in a positive fashion. He's just always been around the plate. And when you get a guy who doesn't miss bats and a power hitter like Chris Davis, the upside's gonna continue to be there. He's 2,500 on FanDuel and he's 3,100 on DK. So I don't disagree with that. I don't know if I'd ever call Chris Davis my favorite anything, but I get the premise here. Yeah. You don't have a further take there, do you?
No, I was just gonna say he actually has a 263 expected ISO this year.
There, yeah. I mean, it's there. Like we know the talent. Well, talent may be the wrong word, but you know the skill set is there. You know it's there. And yes, he's getting older, and yes, the Ks are there. But 1 for 4, 3 strikeouts, and a home run, I'll take that every day.
Right.
At third base, Arenado's in Milwaukee. Moncada against Cashner stands out, but he's $5,100 on DK. Yandy Diaz against Junis. Eduardo Escobar for the Arizona Diamondbacks is 4,700 against Sabathia. You talk about skill set. Again, go back to that Houston Astros lineup. Bregman's 4,600. And so from an upside perspective, and maybe even throw Franco in there, who's had a very solid start to the year at 46 as well, it feels though dropping down beyond that first phase and getting to a Bregman at 4,600 isn't the worst idea.
No, it's really not. And I think that, again, I don't worry as much about ownership on these huge slates because, but just the fact that it's not a super appealing matchup for Houston means that they probably won't carry much ownership either. And you can get, some of the most talented hitters at their positions at a relative discount. So I'm with you on Bregman. I do like Yohan Moncada quite a bit. I like him from the left side a lot more than I like him from the right side.
Sure.
I like anyone with a bat against Andrew Cashner and the Orioles bullpen. So right there. And then also Matt Chapman, I think, is actually in a pretty good spot against Porcello, who really does not miss bats. And, Chapman can do some damage with the Green Monster in left.
Any thoughts on Cole Hamels this year? And I ask that because you have Ryan Healy at 4,100, a cheaper price point for first and third with some power upside. I know he bats down in the lineup, but do you believe in what Hamels has shown us thus far?
Yeah, I mean, he turned it around last year too. I think that he's someone who probably will struggle. He'll still give up home runs, I think, but he does a good job of keeping guys off base. So normally it's solo shots. Healy's someone that I like. I always like players like Healy in tournaments just because he has so much upside and he's never owned. But it's tough for me to, or basically impossible for me to get to Ryan Healy when he's the same price point as Matt Carpenter against Anibal Sanchez and as Eugenio Suarez against Jason Vargas.
That was the next question. So same price point. Of the three, who's your favorite?
Suarez, then Carpenter, then Suarez, then Carpenter.
And we have one Manny Machado is at 4K on DraftKings against Taran. Is this now we start betting on the skill set?
Yeah, but the problem there is that, again, you have the skill set in Suarez and Carpenter in much better matchups. I mean, shit, you have Vlad Guerrero at 3,900 too. Obviously, Canning is supposed to be good, but so is Vlad. So it's just like a stacked price point down here, and it does make it so it's tougher to get to the guys we had talked about earlier, like Moncada and Bregman.
Absolutely, and I think third base is somewhere I will see myself paying down as of right now. Obviously, again, when you talk about ownership and roster construction, things may change a little bit. You even see someone like Justin Turner is down at 3,600 for the Dodgers against Pomeranz. I know it's Oracle Park, but doubles happen in Oracle Park. It's not a home run haven, but you do have some upside. So there's some price points here even cheaper that may have some upside as well. Shortstop. Let's check in there. Top end, Javi Baez is against Felix at 5,600. Tim Anderson, what world am I living in that I'm reading these names? 5,400. Trevor Story in Milwaukee against Chacin. And then you finally drop below 5K. Elvis Andrus against Lyles. Paul DeJong has Sanchez. It's a tough sledding here, price point wise on DK. They're bringing down the pitching price, but the bats obviously are marked up a bit. What do you got as some of your shortstop plays?
These price tags are ugly. I mean, I like Tim Anderson, but not at 5,400 really. I'd rather get the Baez if I have to go to one of the two all the way up there. Taking a little bit of savings and getting the Paul DeJong isn't a bad option. Taking a little bit more savings and getting to like Lindor or Bogarts is fine. Really good. I enjoy the pricing, so I think it's a really good job by DraftKings. Like, I don't want it to sound like I'm complaining about it, but
I'll complain about it. But you're right. I agree with you completely. Yeah.
But it's tough, and I don't really want to pay for any of them.
Yeah. What about getting cheap here, where you have a Carter Kieboom, Nick Ahmed, Corey Seager is 3,900. Again, it's Oracle Park. Feels like we're getting some definite depreciated value on Dodgers and Giants bats because of the park, not necessarily the matchups, but the park. Any of these, Ahmed, Kieboom, or Seager stand out as maybe some savings?
Yeah, I like Kieboom. He hit, I believe, 6th on Monday. He grades out as a guy with pretty good power for a shortstop, and he's reasonably priced against Adam Wainwright, who at this point in his career is, I think, mediocre is a very fair way to describe him. So he'd be the guy that stands out the most for me there. Probably in a little bit better lineup position than Nick Ahmed, and probably a little bit better hitter than Nick Ahmed, and in a little bit better matchup. And then also, not playing in Oracle like Corey Seager is.
All right, let's go to outfield and close it out. As always, Adam has your deep dive Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, unless he's in Nashville living up the single life. Maybe a little bit jealous. How many bachelorette parties did you run into?
Only. So we got Friday night and Saturday night at on the rooftop at Jason Aldean's, and the first night we had 1 or 2 bachelorette parties in there. The second night, I don't think we ran into any bachelorette parties. It was just like groups.
All right, fair enough. You saw a bunch of sports media stories about the bachelorette parties that were like, why is everyone here? Why are there so many people here? I don't get it. And then they realized that the NFL draft was there, and then they did the interview of, what do you think of Daniel Jones? And women then said, I don't know who that is.
Yeah, I think they might have stayed away from that from Broadway a little bit more than usual.
All right, fair enough. Let's talk outfielders. There's a guy named Bryce Harper who has a matchup with Tyson Ross for Detroit. 5,100 is still expensive, even for Harper, who's had a very solid, if not upside year. You have Mookie Betts at 5K. Trout is at 5,700. Blackman against Chastain. Obviously, the top end of outfield has all the options that you could want. Maybe here one or two of your top end options and a couple of cheap guys that come across your radar just to get people going on their Tuesday mornings.
Yeah, so I mean, Bryce Harper really stands out to me against Tyson Ross, who, when he's at his best, can be good against righties, but you have a favorable park for home runs. You have Harper with the platoon advantage, so I like him. I like Juan Soto a lot. Obviously, Mike Trout, goes without saying. Mookie Betts is another, he's $5,000, but he's like the 10th most expensive outfielder. So I'll go right back to him. Joey Gallo, I mentioned earlier that I had some interest in Jordan Lyles, who's coming off of another not particularly good outing, but who's at a reasonable price tag. On the flip side of that, I'm not shying away from guys like Gallo.
Any cheap options here, guys that maybe are part of a stack or names that you at least want to put on people's radars early on? And again, this can completely change by the time Adam's roster construction comes around at lock on Tuesday night. But anybody that from a matchup perspective or a stack perspective you think will be part of your player pool?
I wouldn't even say from a matchup perspective, but just kind of scrolling through those lower guys, just a more power than their price tag warrants perspective. Brandon Nimmo at 3,800 against Luis Castillo. I love Luis Castillo, but Brandon Nimmo is a good hitter, and he's $3,800 on a slate where there aren't many underpriced guys. You can say the same thing about Randall Grichuk against Canning. You can say the same thing for Franmil Reyes against Julio Teheran. Just power bats that you can target, even though the matchup isn't perfect. Just hoping they get a hold of one. Kyle Schwarber at 3,600, probably my favorite out of that group. Assuming he's hitting like 5th or 6th for the Cubs.
I would also, and you already mentioned an Oakland bat earlier against Porcello, but throw the entire whomever's in the outfield for Oakland against Porcello. I feel like this is a big spot for the A's. Find Adam on Twitter at ShipMyMoneyDFS. Find me at Dan Strevert if you so choose. As always, find Awesemo.com at Awesemo_com. You can find the deep dive that Adam writes Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. If you're a member, use the promo code EARLYBIRD for 50% off your first month. With that said, tomorrow morning you get myself and you get Lofty. Then on Thursday, it's Emac and Adam, me and Lofty on Friday, and Adam and Emac on Saturday morning right here on the DFS Early Bird presented by Awesemo.com.